With all these new tablets, should you still consider buying a slightly older entry or mid-tier tablet? Can you get the features and benefits that you want, but without having to pay for the higher end models? In this video, I'm going to compare the iPad 8 to the Galaxy Tab S6 Lite, see which one is a better value, and find out which one is the right fit for you. Now, as far as size, the Tab S6 Lite looks and feels a lot smaller than the iPad 8. It's also lighter, so when you're using it or transporting it, it's gonna feel like a more compact device. It has smaller bezels all the way around rather than the large top and bottom bezels on the iPad 8. There's no home button, and it has a fully laminated display versus the non-laminated display on the iPad 8, which has an air gap. I'll talk more about this difference later on, and also about the image quality and the aspect ratio, but first let's finish talking about the design. So looking around the edges, the iPad 8 has a power button, volume up and down controls, and a lightning port for charging and attaching accessories. There are two stereo speakers on the bottom, which means that the sound is only coming out of one of the sides, and there's a home button on the larger bottom bezel. The Tab S6 Lite has a power button and volume controls on the right, as well as a micro SD card slot, which allows you to relatively inexpensively expand the internal storage by up to 1 TB. There's a USB-C port for charging and accessories, and once again we see two stereo speakers, but there's one located on each side of the tablet, which creates a better soundstage. And speaking of sound, some of you are going to be really happy to hear that both tablets offer a 3.5mm headphone jack so that you could use wired headphones or a headset for gaming. Now overall, when we look at the design, features, and even just the lack of home button, I think that the Tab S6 Lite looks like a more premium tablet. But does this actually translate into a better user experience? Not necessarily. I mentioned the home button, which brings me to biometric authentication, and then we'll talk about the displays. Now, the iPad 8 has a fingerprint sensor built right into the home button, so you can wake the device up and you can authenticate with one finger. The Tab S6 Lite offers face recognition with a front-facing camera, but there's no option for a fingerprint sensor. Now, this is an area where you'll need to choose what works best for you. I found that the fingerprint sensor is more reliable, but the face recognition is more convenient. So again, it's really up to you. Now let's get to the displays, because I know this is a really important feature. There are a few things to unpack here, so I'll give you the specs and then we'll talk about how they actually impact real life use. The Tab S6 Lite has a fully laminated 10.4-inch TFT display with a resolution of 1200 by 2000, a 5:3 aspect ratio, and 224 pixels per inch. The iPad 8 has a non-laminated 10.2-inch liquid retina display with a resolution of 1620 by 2160, a 4:3 aspect ratio, and then 264 pixels per inch. Alright, so starting with the type of display, the fully laminated display on the Tab S6 Lite means that the cover glass, the touch layer, and the display are laminated into one single piece of display and glass. So the image looks like it's painted right on top of the glass. On the iPad 8, if you look at the edge, you'll see that the image looks like it's under a piece of glass and there's a little bit of a gap. Now, this doesn't really matter when you're viewing content, surfing the web, when you're gaming, or using apps, but it does have an impact when you're using the Apple Pencil or the S Pen, so I'll talk about this more later on in the video. Now, the one advantage of a non-laminated display is that it's less expensive to replace, because most of the time, if you scratch or crack the screen, you're only doing that to the cover glass, which is relatively inexpensive, and the actual display itself is unharmed. If you do that on a fully laminated display, the entire module has to be replaced. And if you want to learn more about these differences, I'll put a link to my explainer video in the description. The image quality is quite good on both displays, and they're plenty good for playing games, for streaming videos, for surfing the web, and for working with various apps. The iPad has a higher resolution and a higher pixel per inch count, so when you're playing games, you're definitely going to notice that the image is sharper and more detailed. The 5:3 aspect ratio of the Tab S6 Lite is really nice for watching content because there are smaller black bars at the top and the bottom. But overall, I like the iPad 8 display better because the 4:3 aspect ratio gives me more real estate to work with. I can see more of web pages without needing to scroll, and when I'm in portrait or vertical mode, it doesn't feel quite so narrow. Now, all around, both displays work well, but I'm going to give the edge to the iPad 8. If you're getting value from this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get to the camera, microphone, and speakers. The Tab S6 Lite has a 5 megapixel front-facing camera that's capable of up to 1080p, versus the iPad 8 with only a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera that can shoot at 720p. And here's a sample to show you the difference. So here's a video sample of the Tab S6 Lite and the iPad 8. Both devices have the camera positioned on the short edge, so it's off to the side. So if I'm looking at the center of the Tab S6 Lite, or if I'm looking at the screen on the iPad 8, it doesn't look like I'm actually looking at the camera. One thing that I'm noticing about the Tab S6 Lite is that the white balance seems to change. So the actual color, you can see the color of my skin changes. Whereas with the iPad 8, it seems to be a lot more consistent. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of what you can expect from both tablets. Now, the image quality from the front-facing camera on the Tab S6 Lite is much cleaner, and there's way less noise, which could be a combination of the sensor and post-processing. Now moving on to speakers, the Tab S6 Lite comes out ahead again. The AKG speakers with Dolby Atmos are louder and they sound richer and fuller. We're also getting one speaker on each side, so the audio has much more of a surround sound feel when you're watching content or listening to music. And if you're gaming without a headset, which is really never going to be quite as good, but you'll have a better sense of where sounds come from with the Tab S6 Lite. Since both tablets have a 3.5mm headphone jack, I've been using the Corsair H60 Pro, which I think right now sell for under $50, and they worked great for me, again, with both of these tablets. And since we're talking about accessories, let's talk about stylus and keyboard options, and there's some really important differences here. So the iPad 8 is compatible with the first generation Apple Pencil, which you can get for $100. There is no way to store it on the device, and it charges by plugging it into the Lightning port on the iPad 8 or by using a lightning cable adapter. In contrast to that, Samsung includes the S Pen with the price of the Tab S6 Lite. It doesn't require any charging, and it can be magnetically stored on the side of the device. Now, both options have worked well for me when I'm drawing, taking notes, or photo editing. The S Pen is smaller and lighter, and it has a softer tip, so when you use it, it feels like it gives a little, and it's sort of like writing on a notepad where the pages compress as you apply pressure. The Apple Pencil is larger and heavier, so it feels a little bit more solid in the hand. The tip is more firm, so when you use it, it feels like you're writing on a single sheet of paper on a hard surface. The last difference that I want to mention is that since the Tab S6 Lite has a fully laminated display, the tip of the S Pen looks like it's actually touching the content that you're creating. Whereas with the iPad 8 with a non-laminated display, there's a gap between the tip of the Apple Pencil and the content. Now, this wasn't much of an issue for me when I'm looking straight on, but when I start using it at a slight angle, it becomes more noticeable. Looking at keyboards, there are a lot of options for both tablets. So whether you want a keyboard case or an external keyboard, you should easily be able to find a good option within your budget. Now, if you're trying to get a little more out of your tablet and you're thinking about multitasking, then things get really interesting. Now, the iPad 8 with all the latest updates has very good multitasking capabilities with split view, slide over windows, and a multitasking menu. Now, the Tab S6 Lite has similar features, and it also has the Edge panel. So as far as functionality, the two are pretty close. I would probably give the iPad 8 the slight edge here because everything with iPad OS just seemed to work a little bit more smoothly in tablet mode. But if you're looking to use one of these tablets as a laptop replacement, then it's not even a contest. The Tab S6 Lite comes with DeX, which sort of transforms the user interface into what you get from a desktop operating system. There's an actual desktop with icons, there's a taskbar at the bottom, you can snap windows to the side of the display, you can have floating windows, and when you attach a Bluetooth keyboard and a mouse, you get an excellent user experience. Right now I'm using the Logitech MX Master 3 and the Vissels V84, which has been one of the best typing experience that I've had on a pre-built keyboard. Now, one feature that I love about the iPad 8 and that every person should take advantage of is the ability to use it as a wireless second display. I can use my iPad 8 with my Mac Mini, with my iMac, or any of my MacBooks, And then using a feature called Sidecar, I can always have a dual display setup. This is a feature that I use with all of my iPads, and it's great to have a portable dual display setup with any of my MacBooks. Now let's talk about processing power, because again, we're gonna see some meaningful differences, not just in terms of the numbers, but in terms of actual user experience. If we're just looking at benchmark scores, then we see that the Tab S6 Lite scored 332 for single core performance versus 1111 on the iPad 8. And for multi-core performance, we're looking at 1209 versus 2406. So in both cases, the iPad 8 comes out well ahead. Now, when it comes to actual user experience with the iPad 8, opening, closing, and navigating between apps was faster, and the user interface felt more responsive and less laggy. The Tab S6 Lite worked pretty well, but there were times where I would notice that it's hanging a bit and things just seem to take a little bit longer. Another aspect you want to consider is operating system. Both tablets were using the latest publicly available OS, but Apple has much longer operating system support. And my iPad Air 2, which I got in 2014, is still compatible with iPadOS 15. When it comes to apps, there are certain apps that are only available for one operating system. So if you need a specific app like Procreate or LumaFusion, that would be a reason to get the iPad. In my experience, there are good options with both devices, so it's really going to come down to your particular wants and preferences. Moving on to gaming, I was able to play games on both, but the iPad user experience was a lot better. Games started faster, gameplay was smoother, less laggy, and the image quality was noticeably better. So if you're looking to game on these tablets, both will get the job done, but the iPad 8 is the better option in my opinion. Battery life was also fine with both devices, and if you're using them to surf the web and watch content, they should last all day. If you're using them to play games or perform more resource-intensive tasks, then expect to charge both at some point throughout the day. Now let's discuss the configuration options and then do a final comparison. The iPad 8 starts out for $329 with 32 gigabytes and $429 with 128 gigs of internal storage. And both models come with 3 gigs of RAM. Using the link in the description, you can get the Tab S6 Lite for $280 with 64 gigs, or $350 for 128 gigs, and both come with 4 gigs of RAM. And remember that the Tab S6 Lite includes an S Pen, whereas the first generation Apple Pencil costs an additional $100. All right, so how do I actually look at this comparison? The iPad 8 is larger and heavier, it has a better display, it has significantly more processing power, which results in a better user experience. It's a better option for gaming, you can use it as a secondary display with Sidecar, and it offers longer operating system support. The Tab S6 Lite is smaller and more portable, it has a more premium look, face detection, better camera and speakers, it includes an S Pen, it has a micro SD card slot for expanded internal storage, and it offers DeX for a great laptop-like user experience. Let me know which one would work better for you. Hopefully this video was helpful. Click on my face to subscribe and then watch this video about the iPad Air 4 versus the Tab S7 FE. You know what I always say? Buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.